Well, hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. What's today? Today's Wednesday. I ain't going to put Tuesday on the social media post. So already starting off with the big fail. Top story of the day, the latest in the Guthrie kidnapping situation. I think the general consensus is starting to waft towards looking at brother-in-law as the top suspect, Tommaso Cioni. Let me give you a little bit better recap here on the Guthrie situation. This was from WFAA's morning show.
We turn our attention to the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, with some updates this morning. Overnight, law enforcement releasing a man they detained during a traffic stop as part of that investigation. KNXV in Phoenix spoke to that man last night, who said he was a delivery driver who may have delivered something to Guthrie's home at one point, but was not involved in her disappearance.
Terrifying. Something I didn't do for something. I felt like I was being kidnapped, bro. They didn't tell me anything at the beginning.
Also overnight, investigators completing a search of a home in Rio Rico, which is south of Tucson. No sign, though, of Nancy Guthrie yet. This all just hours after the FBI released images and video of an armed, masked man approaching Guthrie's home the night she was abducted. Sources tell ABC News the Guthrie family did not recognize that man.
So someone else pointed out something interesting. This Tommaso, he hasn't been seen in almost 10 days. What? Look, that doesn't mean he did it. That's not a sign of guilt. But it does raise a little bit of suspicion. He was last photographed on February 3rd. That's 2 days after his mother-in-law went missing. And it wasn't a photo that he intended to take or that he was aware of how good I'm having my photo taken. He actually was behind the steering wheel in a car, sunglasses on, trying to cover his face with a jacket. His wife, also in the car with her hood up, she also covered her face. Does that make you suspicious? And so we've learned a little bit from when the James Show started yesterday. And the fact that they did talk to some other dude, and it was just some other delivery driver, but they didn't even take him down to the station. They didn't keep him. He's not being acquitted or arraigned or being held or being bonded out. They just wanted to talk to him. He was just a delivery driver. Because the fact pattern still remains that the last guy that saw her alive looks like it is the son-in-law. And now the top suspect, people are starting to really lean on the son-in-law theory. Now, if it turns out to not be the son-in-law, boy, these people are going to look stupid. But we're just trying to piece it together. And I get the impression the police know a lot more than they're telling us. And that's understandable. There's no advantage into letting us know certain things that could hinder the investigation. If they do let the cat out of the bag, that they're pretty sure it's Tommaso. What a weird name, Tommaso. They don't want him skipping the country. They don't want him running. They don't want him going into hiding. They want to be able to find him whenever they're ready to, put a bow on this thing and wrap it up. But they searched his house twice. You understand that? Twice. And Tommaso didn't have to consent to the search because his wife did. Annie gave the cops permission to go through whatever helps find mom. So that makes me think if he is in on it, if it is him, it looks like she's not in on it. No, please, whatever helps find mom. He's probably back there going, shut up. I mean, if he's guilty, we don't know if he's guilty. We're just doing the speculation thing. But they searched his house February 4th, 3 days after the missing, the kidnapping. And then it was searched again on February 7th. So let's just go ahead and explore the top theory going on right now. Because if it is Tommaso, then we have to kind of be open-minded about it not really being a kidnapping. Maybe he thumped her. Maybe he killed her. Maybe he went and hid the body and made it just look like a kidnapping. Maybe that's him in the video. Maybe he's the mystery man in the ski mask with the gloves and kind of walking funny, and he has his gun on the holster right in front of his junk, which is kind of odd. So we've got to start thinking about that. Is this even a kidnapping? Because one of the big question marks is the blood that happened out front. If you're a kidnapper, how did that happen? Did she resist and fight back and the struggle? She was wounded? See, that didn't seem very likely for an 84-year-old woman. Is this just some son-in-law, some sociopathic son-in-law killing his mother-in-law to get the inheritance or get the money, or maybe he's doing the ransom? I don't know. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. But we are getting a little bit closer every day. I am a little surprised that you and I do not know the identity of the mystery man from the video that was released yesterday, right before the James show. They had released the video from the Nest doorbell camera. And we're all trying to pick up and do our little online sleuthing thing. Well, look, he's got a mustache, and check out the eyebrows, and a lot of weird stuff going on. But we have the sheriff's department in Pima County is saying, well, yeah, we're just following up on all our leads. Thanks for all the tips. Appreciate it. I think they know what's going on. I think they know who did it. I think they're putting the finishing touches on the case and kind of wrapping it up. Because once they do arrest him and take him in, they've got 48 hours to actually do something with him. And if they have more than 48 hours worth of work to do, they're going to wait. So that's where I'm at. Where are you at? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. And as I say that, I hope you can hear a little bit of hesitation in my voice, because I think it's brother-in-law, but I'm maybe at 50-50 it's him. Maybe. Coming up next, Betsy Brantner Smith, National Police Association. She's a retired law enforcement officer, been through thousands of investigations. We'll see what the new evidence looks like to her. Coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. I think the manhunt for Nancy Guthrie is in its last legs here. I'm at the opinion the cops know, they're just not telling us because there's no benefit to them. There is downside to letting us know, which means it's probably someone in their close orbit, which means I am leaning toward the brother-in-law theory. The thing that pushes me away from the brother-in-law theory the most, though, is the very curious coincidence with all the Epstein stuff that's going on, because if it is the brother-in-law, you got to admit, that's a hell of a coincidence that all this is popping off in the week after the Epstein files got released. 6 million or 3 million, whatever, files dumped. Savannah Guthrie is all over them. Her husband has ties to working with Bill Clinton for 20 years, and he's all over them. Someone know something I don't know? So that is a weird coincidence, and it looks like that may just be a weird coincidence, and it's really the hardest thing that pulls me away from thinking, well, yeah, it's probably brother-in-law, most likely scenario. He has a motive. He has the inside knowledge. He's somewhat has the inside knowledge, and there was some planning to this, but it wasn't a professional. This wasn't something off the cuff. The video evidence certainly doesn't dispel that theory. So that's what I'm leaning on so far. And look, I'm kind of enjoying this more so than I do most forensic stories, primarily because the connection with Savannah Guthrie and Epstein and the Clintons and all that. So there's a little more intrigue in this than if it was just, your regular old kidnapping case. But I have a feeling we're all going to have answers to this pretty soon. Ron, Southlake, you're on WBAP.
Hey, man, how are you? Listen, I kind of agree with you on all of this. I said about a week ago, I suspect the brother-in-law for all the reasons that we normally look at, which is he's the last one to see her. But when you watch the taped interviews or the messages that the family puts out, if you look at the wife, she has her head down. She never looks at the camera. I just kind of suspect something there. Again, I'm not a sleuth, and I don't want to accuse someone, obviously, this early, but I'm kind of with you on that same team that there's just something suspicious and not right about that whole scenario there.
Well, if it is brother-in-law, Ron, then the next question is, does Annie know too? Is the sister in on it, or is the brother-in-law acting rogue here on his own? Because if she is like looking down and someone's like, she looks sad, but there's no crying, her there's no tears, her eyes aren't even really watering up, so that may just be performative. But I don't know if brother-in-law is in on it. I'm not sure if sister's in on it, because
You may be correct. You may be absolutely correct. I just watched the body language, and it just didn't see much emotion from her at all, almost like she's covering something. And I could be dead wrong. I realize.
Well, look, I've had some close people die to me, and there is like that stage for a few days when you're really just catatonic. You don't feel anything. You don't feel hot. You don't feel cold. Food doesn't taste spicy. You forget to go to the bathroom. So it's I'm not such a good judge of character of people in those situations. Now, if you're just sitting in a room in a comfortable setting and, there's climate control and you have no reason to be acting antsy, we can all judge that. But if it is brother-in-law, the next question is Annie in on it too? And one of the reasons I find that hard to believe, number one, it's her mom. I think it's a lot easier for someone to kill their mother-in-law versus their own mom. Heck, I bet you there's a scary chunk of people are out here right now that wishes they could kill their mother-in-law. But Ron, it's also odd that they would both be sociopathic enough to not only want to do this, but to be able to pull it off and then to be able to lie about it for this long.
Well, I agree. I completely agree with you. Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah. So brother-in-law and sisters. So brother-in-law, but sisters not in on it. Is that where you're at, Ron?
Well, at this point, yes.
Yeah.
At this point, yes.
And it's a soft yes. I have a soft yes over here too. All right, good stuff.
It's just mind-boggling that it's taken this long, and I'm just following the clues like everyone else. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ron. See, this is the fun part of playing this game. Betsy Brantner Smith, National Police Association. Thank you for joining us once again on the James Show. Your law enforcement background is useful here, because my first question for you is, I get the impression the police know a whole lot more than they're telling us. In fact, I think they may be closing in on the guy right now. They're just putting the finishing touches on the case. Is that possible or probable? So let's talk about the dude that they interviewed yesterday. He was a delivery driver. My impression is that he had door dashed to the house, but he wasn't the last person to see her. Thomaso, the son-in-law, still, I guess, in the storyline that they're giving us, is the last person to see her. Is that still the timeline? Right. So that's still on, but here's the scary part. Once we identify brother-in-law or whoever else it is that took her, I'm still kind of concerned about the length of time that she's been gone, which means the likelihood that she's still alive seems to be going down by the day. Yeah, that's enough to give you a heart attack. Well, Betsy, so you said people were reporting on a live flight. We also saw a report yesterday of the SWAT teams being deployed. And so some people were like, well, are they going to go get their guy? And I'm like, I don't know. It could just be some meth head. It could be Jesse Pinkman with a lab in the basement. You don't know. That's a Breaking Bad reference, by the way. Do we know what that SWAT team was scrambling to yesterday? Well, is it really essential for the FBI to be involved in this? Because I kind of hope that local authorities, especially in a place as big as Tucson, could solve a kidnapping case themselves. Oh. Well, Betsy Brantner Smith, what's your online spot for the National Police Association? All right, you'll have to come back on and we'll talk about the shady sheriff when all this is over with. 800-288-9227. More on the updates for Savannah Guthrie's missing mom coming up on the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker. Just trying to get to the bottom of the mystery of Savannah Guthrie's missing mom. And we've done a lot of explaining on why the son-in-law is the top suspect in the comments under the threads of most of the discussions online. The number two theory, I believe, is some sort of connection to the Epstein coincidence. And let me explain why I think it's not the Epstein coincidence, because it's pro, but it's not that pro. There was a planning, but there wasn't that much planning. I mean, the guy thought, there's a doorbell camera. I should do about that. But he didn't do anything about that. He didn't make that decision until after he had already been caught on the doorbell cam. So the guy was planning it out, but he's not a pro. So could this be a crime of opportunity? Some contractor, some landscaper, some guy was just doing yard work, or some guy was, I don't know, fixing some carpentry or detailing a car in the driveway. I don't know. But I'm still leaning toward brother-in-law, leaning away from Epstein. And the one thing I've got to give you Epstein theorists is that is a hell of a coincidence. The timing on that is just unbelievably weird. Sandra, Fort Worth, you're on WBAP.
Hi. I'm wishing for Rush Limbaugh. He would be talking about what a distraction this is and everything that's going on behind it. I'm tired of hearing this stuff for days on end and people speculating about this, that, and the other, and they don't know anything. And I'd like to just hear something else on the radio besides that, because there's an overlap on what's being said, and it's really, really old. It's really, really old.
No, I understand
that. Happening in the world is bad, and it doesn't get this kind of notoriety.
Well, let me give you the answer to that then, because you will see a lot of people say, I'm sick of hearing about this story. But from our point of view on this side of the microphone, we see what you guys are clicking on our Facebook post. We see what you guys like. Yesterday for the podcast, I just had 3 different hours, and all of them were labeled some different formulation of the Savannah Guthrie mom story. And I just had my 6th best podcast day in the last 2 years since I've been on WBAP. And it's not a stellar story. It's not the election. It's not the Super Bowl. It's Savannah Guthrie's mom, my 6th best day. So people can say that they're sick of it, but they're really not.
Well, I am.
Well,
I think it's so weird that she's such a treasure that they had such cheap security going for her. I think that's really a hoot.
Well, that's kind of a solid point, although you just don't think your mom's going to get rolled up in something like this, even if you are a Savannah Guthrie.
No,
but look,
I didn't think my husband would be knocked off by DEI doctors in Southwest Harris either.
Right, there you go.
Nobody gave a damn about that but me.
Boy, I really feel you on that one, because I've had loved ones die.
There are a lot of people that go through a lot of stuff, and it doesn't get that kind of notoriety, and people don't even care. This is more like voyeurism to me.
Yeah, hey, I feel that. If it makes you feel any better, this guy is going to be caught. This mystery is going to be solved, and we'll probably never talk about it again. And there will be many, many more days for the rest of the year where we can talk about immigration, and we can talk about Epstein, and we can talk about the economy, and we can talk about, because like later on in the show, I'm getting off of this story pretty quick because I want to talk about the El Paso airport situation. I want to talk about some of the other stuff that's going on around Texas with the Sharia city battles, and Ken Paxton's got a new lawsuit. And then we had some more walkouts in schools here in North Texas this week after we being told that that's not happening and they're not coordinating. So schools are lying to you. We're going to get to some more of that today, but I would be remiss if I didn't cover this, because people can say that they're not interested in this, but behind the scenes, the traffic tells me that people really are.
It makes me like the society much less.
Well, that might be a good takeaway.
Has a lot of problems. This is just icing on the cake.
All right. Well, I'm glad you got that out there, because there's a lot of people who feel like that. That is Sandra in Fort Worth. And actually, yeah, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the El Paso airport being shut down. Did you hear about that this morning? The FAA just told El Paso, hey, we're shutting down your airport for 10 days. They had to scramble. There were flights in the air that had to be rerouted to Las Cruces or some other regional airport. And then a couple hours later, they're like, nah, that whole thing's off. You're open again. And we really don't have much of an explanation for it. But I'll tell you what we do know next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey, homeowners, James Parker here for Rhino Shield. Listen, if you're building your dream home right now, you might already have the slab laid down, or you might just be in the planning phase. But when it comes time to take care of the outside of your home, we don't use paint on the outside anymore. Paint's for the inside of your house. The outside of your house wants Rhino Shield. It's just better than paint. You're crazy to not do it because paint doesn't lower your energy costs. Paint doesn't give you a 6.9 R factor. Rhino Shield does. Paint doesn't block 90% of UV sun rays. Rhino Shield does. Paint doesn't expand when your house gets hot in the summer and contracts when your house gets cold in the winter. Rhino Shield does. Paint doesn't last for 25 years with no cracking, flaking, or peeling. Rhino Shield does. Paint doesn't even increase the resale value of your house. It's just a given. Rhino Shield does. It's 8 to 10 times thicker than paint. It won't change your surface texture. Your house will look gorgeous, and it will stay looking gorgeous for decades instead of just years. If you don't believe me, go online, look at some of the 5-star Google reviews, A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, but check it out yourself. Go to rhinoshielddfw.com. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. It was a weird day for our Texan neighbors over in El Paso. They woke up this morning and they were told, hey, bro, you can't use your airport. It was a little weird there because this is how it was originally reported before it was turned back on.
Some breaking news out of West Texas this morning. The FAA shutting down the skies over El Paso for the next 10 days, saying it's over national defense aerospace concerns. Now, this is inside DFW this morning. That airport likely to face some of the impacts from that shutdown in El Paso. This is a restriction that took effect with very little warning. Airport officials say that travelers should check with their airlines. As you can imagine, there may be some major disruptions today as airlines scramble to get travelers to their destination. Our senior political reporter, Jason Whiteley.
All right, that's enough of that. We found out just a few minutes later. We changed our mind. Airport's back on. There we go. Carry on. Business as usual. Nothing to see here. And that was it. What the heck is that? So anyway, let's continue with that report from WFAA. Just
remember, this is unprecedented. Of course, the FAA closed airspace over U.S. cities during 9/11, but as far as he can remember, it's been quite a while since any airspace has been closed this long without any clear stated reason. Again, New Orleans in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, that was weather related though, and you saw some damage to FAA facilities, of course, due to that storm. But Greg, I can't think of any time in memory where we've seen an airport like this shut down for this amount of time.
all right. The mayor of El Paso comes out. He gives a press conference. It's kind of worthless. He takes this entirely political angle here, and until the questions are being asked, you don't learn anything. He just comes out and says, this is wrong. This is terrible. They shouldn't have done this. And then the first question that comes up is like, or actually, I think it's the second question that's asked is, why did they do this? And he's like, I don't know. Well, then how do you know it was wrong? How do you know it was the wrong thing to do? Maybe there was a whole phalanx of F-16s coming at us, like Iron Eagle 4, because they only made 3. You don't know. Maybe there was some military reason. Maybe there was a UFO. Maybe there was like a fleet of blimps. If you don't know, how do you know it was wrong? And that's what ticks me off. He just goes immediately political. Well, this administration is just wrong. Just stop
Well,
it.
good morning, everyone. I want to provide an official update to the people of El Paso regarding the FAA's decision to place a temporary flight restriction and then their decision to lift the temporary flight restriction over our city. This unnecessary decision has caused chaos and confusion in the El Paso community. I want to be very, very clear that this should have never happened.
How do you know? Here, look, let me go ahead to later in the press conference, because he spoke for 12 minutes here. Did the classic political thing and not really saying much, but here, all the good parts are in the questions section.
Laura, who's next?
Yeah, Laura, who's next?
Okay.
We're going to open it up to questions. I will ask you, please wait till we get a microphone to you. How many emergency medical flights or urgent?
All right, that's first question. Second question?
What was the official reason given to you by which agency for the closure of the airport?
Yeah, so we're still determining the official reason, but I can tell you that the FAA was the primary agency that made the decision to shut down our airspace here over this community. So the official reason, we're still trying to get that answer of why it was closed down here in El Paso and southern New Mexico.
Isn't this a garbage display here? We know the decision was wrong. Well, okay, well, what's the rationale for the decision? We don't know. You don't know. But you know it's wrong? Yes. It's okay to just come out and have a press conference and say, look, I don't like the way this looks, but I don't know why they did it. It hasn't been explained to me, so I will reserve judgment until I have any clue of what the hell's going on. No, you just go ahead and you got to have an opinion anyway. This administration, relax. Because since he had this press conference, the only real answer we've got is, hey, there was some drones or something like that, and we didn't get any more explanation. Was it a drone? Was it a whole fleet of drones? Was it a bunch of drones and they got shot down? Was it a bunch of drones and they used some sort of jammer and they just fell out of the sky? Was it a bunch of drones who were coming toward us and then they stopped and they turned around on their own? We don't know. But we know it's wrong. I don't believe you. And I'm not too worried about drones. You know, the drones are new, and a lot of times new things can be scary because we haven't really seen how this plays out in a theater of war. But ladies and gentlemen of America, the last thing we have to worry about is drones taking over our country. I don't know if you realize this, but the average American, especially young men, we've been training for this our entire lives. You know, and it's different than in years past. You and I couldn't train with a nuclear bomb. You and I couldn't train with an F-16. But if the future of warfare is going to be drones, we are so ready. Ever since I got my first Nintendo in 1987, I know it came out in 85. We were kind of poor, so shut up. We've been training for it ever since then. Look, does this sound familiar to you? Sound familiar? This is Duck Hunt, y'all. This is Duck Hunt. This is what me and the boys have been doing and have drilled into our heads since we were 10 years old, and we are so ready. Just because they have the version or the gameplay where you're not shooting at ducks, but you're shooting at the skeet. That kind of looks like drones anyway. It's just these little white discs. Dude, it's going to be hilarious. China, Iran, Russia, they're probably piling up tens of thousands of drones. And there's going to be one day when this all pops off, and they're going to take the drones outside, and they're going to be so disappointed when me and you and all of my buddies from Bug Tussle, we just go out there with our shotguns. Oh my God! Not only are we going to win the war, we're going to have a good time. We're going to be collecting. Get the high score, just like back in the day, except with real guns. Do you remember how they used to have the setup for you to shoot at skeet and do target practice in 7-Eleven? Remember how they had the stalls in 7-Eleven where you get there with the rifle? Dude, when the drone war pops off, we're so winning. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. So good to see you, too. We have law enforcement back in Annie Guthrie's home. I was watching some of that on the TV and then doing my little furious searches online at the same time. It looks like they're in a car right now. Some guys are going through it, and it looks like some of them are about to leave. So when we find out more about what's going on there, I'll be sure to pass it along. But that's not the only news story we got going on today. You know, there's the whole Epstein saga still swirling around, and interesting things that we can learn and glean from that. We still have ICE protests and walkouts that are happening in North Texas by students this week after being promised that they weren't going to allow it. So we'll get to all that. But right now we're talking about the El Paso airport being shut down for a super brief time. Early this morning, FAA told El Paso International Airport. I've flown in there a few times. My dad's from there. My mom went to high school there. She only lived there briefly, though. She's actually born here, Dallas. But that all aside, I do have some familiarity with El Paso. Doesn't give me any great insight into this story because we still don't really know why they closed it down. They said something kind of vague about a drone or drones or something to that effect. So I don't know what the heck to even think about this until we know more, but didn't stop the mayor from coming out and saying that this was wrong. Oh, yeah? Why'd they do it? We don't know. Well, then how do you know it's wrong? Carl in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP.
Well, hello there, James.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a daughter that lives in El Paso, and her husband is doing his medical residency there. So they're credible people. They relayed to me in a text message this morning that the cartels have been coming into our airspace, and as well as Fort Bliss, and that they were in preparation of protecting the bases. They were setting up the ability to shoot them down.
Yeah, you know what, Carl, that's worth mentioning is not only is El Paso a giant city, it's like the sixth biggest city in Texas, it's on an international border, and it has a giant military installation there. My grandfather was stationed at Fort Bragg. That's how my dad's family ended up in Texas after World War II, after he got shot in the eye by a Japanese sniper. He got stationed at Fort Bliss, and they just stayed. My grandparents just stayed. They're like, whoa, this is kind of nice out here. And so Fort Bliss, huge military installation. It's one of those places where they fly a lot of planes out, and then they can fly over to somewhere in New Mexico where they have these ranges where they just bomb stuff, like over by Carlsbad or White Sands and whatnot. So there's a lot of military activity going on there. Not quite as big as Fort Hood, but I can see why they would be hypersensitive toward anything, not just coming across the international border, but an international border that has a giant military installation right there in El Paso. So thanks for bringing that up, Carl. So what do you glean from this? You think that's right? You think it's the...
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because he's, these are credible people. They're both professionals in the medical world, and they're connected to a lot of people that know what's going on in the city. They were absolutely confident that it was the information they got was the amount of cartel drones that had incurred into the airspace, and they were I guess they were setting up batteries to deal with them. I don't know why they shut down for 10 days. That's nuts. But I guess they thought maybe that thought it was. I don't know any more than that. Other than she texted me this morning and said it was the cartels that were flying the drones incurring into their space.
Right, and that's the other interesting part is why did they say 10 days to begin with, and then a couple hours later they're like, we're back on. It wasn't 10 days after all. It was an hour and a half, or what was it, 2 hours, I think.
Yeah.
So that does seem kind of weird. I would love to hear the explanation for that. And then
we'll see if I can find out, and I'll call you back.
Well, all right, Carl, get on it. You can be the adjunct reporter for the James Show today. I appreciate it, Carl.
All right. You're sure welcome, James. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I also have family down in Laredo. My grandfather on the other side was from Laredo, and they were involved in law enforcement. I still have cousins down there, and they have a strange neighbor right there because across from Laredo is Nuevo Laredo. It's just a continuation of a big city, but it's completely different now. In the fact that once your government is 100% bought off and bribed and completely controlled by the cartels, then you have this weird gray area to where if there's a government helicopter that's flying up there, is that a government helicopter or is that a government helicopter doing the bidding of the cartels, which pretty much makes it a cartel helicopter with government symbolism on it. And then it gets even weirder when that government helicopter starts to hover really low over the plaza where the Cadillac Cafe is in Nuevo Laredo, and then just starts unloading 50 caliber machine guns into the plaza. If you are on the Texas side of the border near the Rio Grande, in the neighborhood where my great grandmother used to have a restaurant, they said you could see the helicopter and you could see some guy up there who's just shooting bullets down into this plaza, this little town square that's known for having cute shops and restaurants. And you don't know, is that the cartels doing that? Is that the government shooting at the cartel? Is that the government doing the bidding of the cartel, shooting at the cartel's rivals? It really is that wild. And the cartels really do have that much control to where even if it's the government doing it, you're not even sure if it's really the government or they're just the avatar for the wishes of the cartel at the time. So when you deal with something like drones coming over the international border right next to El Paso, because the international airport is right on the river, like it's adjacent to the river. There is no buffer zone from when someone crosses our international airspace before they get to the international airport where bad things can happen. There's a little bit of distance there for Fort Bliss, but it's negligible. So, there's a lot of suspicions around this. I'm really interested to hear the rest of that story. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, David Kelly, program director of our sister station in Tucson, KCUB, will tell you the latest about what's going on on the ground there. And I'll ask him about this. I guess it's the third time the police have been investigating at Annie Guthrie's house. So updates next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. All right. New details in the case of Nancy Guthrie. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Your home for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. Also, our sister station out in Tucson, KCUB, has an excellent program director named David Kelly who's coming back on. And David, thanks for coming back on. I know we just talked to you a couple days ago, but I saw just a few minutes ago that the police are back out at Annie Guthrie's house searching it for, what is this, the third time, David? All right, so son-in-law, the lead suspect, according to the internet sleuths, was the last one to drop her off, last one to see her. Now, they had come from dinner. Did they have dinner at his house or did they go out to a restaurant? Because if they had dinner at his house, that would kind of explain why there's extra attention being paid to his house. And it might not be because he's the primary suspect. It might just be that's the last place we know she was. Right. But if they did eat at home, maybe this was the fella that brought them the food. And so that's why they had to go talk to the Ron Rico kid. Well, I'm just trying to put it together here. Well, is there anything on the ground in Tucson, David, that you guys know that isn't being reported to the rest of us through the media? Well, David Kelly, I think the ski mask might be a key piece of evidence because, like, what's the temperature there right now in Tucson? It's like in the 50s here, but like, how often is someone buying a mask in Tucson? If you have one purchase in a 100-mile radius, that's probably your guy. Does it? Well, for the reference, for the rest of us, I just asked my phone. It's 78 degrees in Tucson right now. That is not ski mask weather, David Kelly. All right. Well, thanks for sharing some inside looks with us from Tucson. I really appreciate it. It's David Kelly from KCUB. How do they find your work online, sir? Oh, is this Arizona's number one? Oh, he's talking smack, and he's talking to my Raider listeners. Thank you, David Kelly. Appreciate it, sir. 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, ICE protest walkouts continue in North Texas public schools. I thought the governor said that's a no-no. Are the administrators being honest with the parents? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So the walkouts are continuing in Texas high schools. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. The ICE walkouts, some more happened this week. And this has got some parents' antennas buzzing because there were walkouts that happened last week. And when the questions were being asked, well, are the kids being punished for this? And the school said, no. Oh, okay. So you're giving them special privileges and allowing them to break the rules for political purposes? They said, no. That's not what we're doing. We're definitely not coordinating it or facilitating it, but we can't stop the kids from walking out. Oh, okay. So they're going to be punished. Sure. That didn't sound very convincing last week. And you have more evidence this week that you were right to be suspicious. The walkouts continue in North Texas.
Tell me what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
Hundreds of students walked out of several Dallas ISD high schools yesterday as they protest ICE operations in North Texas. Governor Greg Abbott is demanding any student who skips class face the consequences, including being counted absent.
Now, this comes as residents in Dallas and Tarrant County, many of them have questioned the local law enforcement and their involvement with that federal immigration agency. Natalie Haddad with us in studio this morning with more on the tense meetings as some North Texans are demanding answers about those partnerships.
Yeah, Mark, we start in Tarrant County, where the sheriff's office has been cleared to expand its partnership with ICE. It's what sent the meeting they had last night into a tailspin. Commissioners approved the expansion last night. The vote allows the sheriff's office to accept a $140,000 grant to strengthen its federal partnership beyond its current jail-based agreement with ICE. But the meeting turned contentious, and it did so pretty quickly. More than a dozen people showed up with signs urging commissioners to reject the grant, and at least 2 attendees were asked to leave or they were escorted out.
We can talk in. You said outside. Now you're telling me to keep rolling on. You said outside. I'm outside.
Now, around the same time last night in Dallas, residents pressed the city's police oversight board about interactions with ICE. The scrutiny comes about a month after Police Chief Daniel Como declined to say how often officers encounter ICE agents or what those interactions even look like. Several speakers demanded specifics, concerns some board members appeared to agree with.
These moments get people heard. These moments will get me on the news, but I'm tired of moments. It's time for a damn movement.
Now, these meetings, of course, come amid local and nationwide protests, as we've talked about here on WFAA, and after recent fatal shootings of U.S. citizens by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. North Texans have also protested plans for a proposed ICE detention facility in Hutchins. I'll send it back to you, Dia.
Boy, isn't that some questionable context? Yes, these walkouts come amid bad actions by ICE. It's almost like justifying it. You can understand why they're doing this. You know what else it comes amid? It comes amid billions of dollars of fraud being stolen by immigrants. It comes across as thousands of victims of violent crimes at the hands of immigrants. It comes across as robberies and rapes and child porn and human trafficking, and prostitution, and drug cartels and trafficking in mules and fentanyl. Yeah, there's a little more context you could have put on that to make it at least like slightly less biased. But when you hear that whole run there, what do they give you? 1:40 into their 2-minute segment, they give you the other side of the story. One guy talks for 7 seconds. So this was nothing but a celebration and a support mechanism for the damn protest. Listen, you cannot call yourself the party of law and order. You cannot say, you cannot make any draws or appeals to the Constitution. You cannot call the other side chaos. They want chaos. No, you want chaos. You don't want the laws to be enforced when it comes to immigration, as we've all gone and voted for over and over and over. 80% of us want these deportations to happen in the latest surveys. And since you didn't win at the ballot box, you are the threat to democracy by thwarting the will of the people and demanding that these laws don't be enforced. And you're not going through the proper democratic channels to do it. On top of that, while you're protesting and having your hissy fits, you're also asking for the laws to be ignored and not enforced. And I don't want to say not enforced. I want to say selectively enforced, politically enforced. Because if your kid ditched school to go to the lake, he would get counted absent. If your kid ditched school to go support the Second Amendment or go to some rally where he held up a foam core sign saying, yay, Second Amendment, he would get counted absent. They are demanding special treatment based solely on their political ideology, and they're getting it. And they're getting it from the government at your expense. You are paying for this fraud. I'm kind of out of time here. I have two more audio cuts on this topic that you're going to love to hear. One is a local mom in Plano who is upset about the reaction she's getting from Plano ISD. Another is a guy who's pointing back at history when the people who are accusing you of being a Nazi are kind of following the pattern that they're accusing you of. 800-288-9227. That's coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So your kids are still walking out in North Texas public schools. Well, not all of them, just the ones that are amenable to such political, what is this, exploitation? Because it's the bias and the way people interpret these stories is exhausting. Because if the people agree with it, oh, look, they're walking out. This is great. Students are learning how to stand up for their rights. No, that's not how you stand up for your rights. Throwing a hissy fit in the street, abandoning your responsibilities, thwarting your education, and harassing people into not supporting a policy that 80% of us support. That's not a good lesson for the kiddos, and that's not how you get things done, and that's not how things are supposed to work in a democracy. You're supposed to get your representatives to go vote on laws you like, and if you don't get your way, then you're just going to have to do better in the next election. But hissy fits have been pretty effective here, and they're definitely going to keep happening if no one gets punished for it. Now, all I'm asking is not that the schools lock up your kids and not allow them to protest. But if they are going to protest and they get counted absent, they don't get to make up that work. They get the zero. They get just like if you ditched class and went to the lake. That's all we're asking. You know what? We're asking for equal treatment. Oh, you mean like equality? Oh my goodness. You mean you're judging people? Here's salty tattooed mama talking about her back and forth with Plano on some of this.
Oops, I did it again. Yeah, I'm about to be the whole problem for Plano ISD. So according to the Texas Education Agency, only 9% of students at Plano Senior High School can read at grade level. I know I had said 11% in a previous video, but that was from 2023 to 2024. Apparently from 2024 to 2025, that number went down to 9. But yet they're graduating 95% of their students. That math don't math because those two numbers should never exist in the same sentence. That means that 91% of students cannot consistently read, comprehend, analyze, and write at the level a high school diploma is supposed to represent. But hey, and I wish I could blame COVID for the numbers, but I can't. Because in 2019, before COVID shutdowns happened, only 10% of Plano senior students met grade level reading standards. So what exactly is happening in Plano ISD? I'm sure the 36% of chronic absenteeism isn't helping. Yeah, you heard that right. That means 1 in every 3 kids are missing weeks and weeks of school. Now let's go ahead and get that liberal pro-education crowd uncomfortable a little bit more. Plano ISD has 3 senior high schools. Same district, same funding, same standards. Plano Senior, 9% reading. Plano West, 9% reading. Plano East, 67% reading. Now, why is there such a dramatic difference between Plano East and the other 2 schools? Maybe that's because Plano West and Plano Senior allow political walkouts to take place. And I know Plano ISD, you told me that they weren't happening, and then you told me that they get 10 minutes, and then you told me that they weren't allowed, and then they happened anyways. But let's layer some more things in. Like how Plano ISD school board races are technically supposed to be nonpartisan, but local Democrat groups endorse a majority of the trustees currently sitting in charge. And we all know that the Democrats love to tell us how pro-education they are. So explain this to me like I'm part of that 91% of kids from your school that can't read. 2 of the 3 senior high schools have 9% literacy rates while allowing political walkouts during instructional hours. And the one that doesn't allow this seems to be doing just fine. And this is why we want school choice. Because in no logical, common sense, actually educated world does 9% literacy equal 95% graduation.
Oh, I like the sound of that. I just don't think she goes far enough. This is something I've been stressing on the James Show since the first James Show, since the first time I ever talked on radio in 2002. How can anybody graduate if they're not at a 12th grade reading level? That shouldn't even be a thing. How did you get to 12th grade? So school's a farce. Public school is a farce. They don't teach your kids how to read. They don't teach your kids math. They will have secret sex talks with your 8-year-old with obscene material in the library. Oh, they'll teach them that. They'll teach them that ICE is evil, that America sucks, that white people are bad, but not to read. Everything but reading. And I don't understand why there's not just a mob of people with torches and pitchforks demanding we end public schools. How bad does it have to be? Because we talk about separation of church and state like they don't want the 10 Commandments on the wall. They don't allow for any praying or any mention of the Bible. You can't even admit the Bible exists hardly in the curriculum for a public school. So they've managed to take your religion, your ideology, your worldview, and separate it, cleave it from the curriculum at public schools. However, what do they replace that with? If they're not driven by Christianity, if they're not driven by the same worldview, morals, values that you are, what are they driven by? Their religion is the state. So when you go to send your kids to school, you're sending them to what the leftists consider church. And so you have a state property with state-owned buildings, government employees getting taxpayer money, teaching a government-approved curriculum with government administrators, and you wonder why our kids are coming out on Team Blue when they're subjected to this for 13 straight years and then maybe 4, 5, 6 more years of this in college? How long are you going to allow the government to take money from you and indoctrinate the next generation against you? 800-288-9227. There's not a real answer for that. But here's another amateur historian, Tom Hatsis, making an interesting comparison to children protesting.
Know what taking kids to protest reminds me of? The Third Reich. In Germany, during the 1930s, children were forced to go to protests, flag ceremonies, and other public spectacles, brainwashed into seeing these events as joyful civic duty. Attendance was organized through the schools. They normalized the idea that participation was essential to being a good little Yahtzee. Now, today in America, we are seeing violent attacks against kids who refuse to go along with this programming. The Yahtzee state sought to ensure that by the time the child became an adult, her sense of self, morality, and belonging were inseparable from National Socialism. Let's explore that. Here in the States, we use gender ideology to disrupt the child's sense of self, teach her that political violence is moral, and use the cult of inclusion as a replacement for real belonging. Now just swap out National Socialism for democratic socialism, and here we are. The state ensured that schools were centralized and brought into line with Yahtzee ideology through a process called Gleichschaltung, or coordination. Can't have people thinking for themselves. The aim wasn't just to teach beliefs. It was to shape children into Manchurian candidates, like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Remember, to your professorial and administrative overlords, you are expendable. But please bear in mind, you are also white. There aren't going to be any marches in the streets if your kid gets accidentally shot.
800-288-9227. I think he's being a little extreme, but his absurdity is proving a point. So where the people that are accusing you of behaving like Nazis, they're doing a lot of Nazi things while they're pointing that finger. And I'm not saying that they're as bad as Nazis. Clearly the Nazis are worse than modern day liberals, especially Democrats here in America. But don't let that stop you from recognizing how bad public schools are and how much better things would be if we actually got rid of them. You know, you people that want lower property taxes, you want your money to stop being used against you. You want to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. Cut the system. Cut them off. You got to ask yourself, can it be worse than this? Can it be worse than Plano with a high school that graduates people and only 9% of them can read at a 12th grade level? How bad does it have to get? 1%? 0%? Because that's a 91% failure rate you're subsidizing there. And you just remember that when you cut your mortgage check this month, how much of that is going to these failed schools that aren't teaching your kids to read or write or do math. They're teaching them to hate America, hate Christianity, and hate you. 800-288-9227. More on the public school issue with protesting coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. To protest or not to protest? I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So we had more walkouts in North Texas. Now, they didn't do this at my kid's school out in Bug Tussle. I mean, it's not necessarily that we're better people. What? That was the wrong button. No. This is the Bug Tussle theme. I'm sorry. It's not that we're better. I don't know. I think we probably have an administration and a faculty that's a little more amenable to the worldview of me and you and most of the people that listen to WBAP. Sure. But also, like, one of the reasons they protest is so it can be on the news. That makes it an effective form of propaganda. If they protest and the only people that see it are the few dozen people that happen to drive by while they're out there hooting and hollering and holding signs, that's not nearly as effective as the reach as when the TV station sends someone out there. And so then everyone, when they get home from work and they watch the news at 5 or 6 or 10 o'clock, they see it. Now thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will get the message. That's the effectiveness of the protest. Out in Bug Tussle, no one's going to see it. They're not going to send a TV station. And who's going to see it? Like 14 cows? So this is all about exploiting your position in a government authority over children to push a political agenda against the will of the people who are paying the taxes that fund your paycheck. It's pretty immoral stuff to start with. But it should also bother you that it's never for a cause that you agree with. They're always taking your money and they're using their kids either in the protests or in the indoctrination against you. And then they lie about it. Oh, we're not coordinating. No, we're not coordinating with the cops. No, we're not letting them off the hook. No, we're going to punish them accordingly. No, we didn't say that they could have 10 minutes for free. We're not planning this out. We're not part of the political movement here. Yeah, you are. And they accidentally say things like in Austin, the police chief accidentally admitted that the Austin Police Department is coordinating with Austin ISD when it comes to ICE protests. But it's just for safety, y'all.
And what AISD is doing with their students. I just met with AISD yesterday. We have a monthly meeting with them. We talked about their walkouts. They have several planned throughout this month. So we are in coordination with them. If we have to help with traffic, we'll do those things. So we are in coordination with AISD as well.
Oh, I thought you weren't coordinating. I thought... You know, the dastardly part about this, if this was a private school, I would have very little to say. I would say I disagree with your thoughts on ICE, but I wouldn't be able to say it's immoral or it's wrong or it's exploiting your government position to use taxpayer money to thwart the will of the taxpayers, because that wouldn't be happening. But then they're going to come out and they're coordinating. So now the cops and the independent school district. So now our law enforcement apparatus and our public school apparatus, they're both taking money from you and using it against you. You know how many people want these deportations? It is now above 80%. It's more than 70% of Democrats. So they're doing all this. So the policy preferences of 19% of the population rule the day, so we don't enforce the laws that the rest of us want, so we don't get equal treatment. That's where we run into clearly. Doesn't everyone agree this is immoral? Let's go to Jim in Plano. Hey, Jim, you're on WBAP.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hey, I just got a couple of things for you. I got a brother-in-law works over there at the really, really good reading Plano Senior High. And he's brought it to our attention here that every Friday there's students that are allowed to go to prayer on Fridays. So they're leaving class, they're excused from class, and then they go to prayer. Now, this is a predominantly...
All right, wait, hang on. No. Is this Lutherans that are going to prayer?
It's a predominantly non-Christian based.
Oh, I don't know. My first guess was probably Lutheran, and then second, I think I was going to say Presbyterian, maybe Methodist. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, anything past, the Episcopalians, you got to worry about them.
Okay, but Jim, what you're bringing up, we're joking about it, but this should really tick everybody off because they actively persecute any semblance of Christianity anywhere in the public sphere when it comes to schooling. But now they're making special accommodations and exceptions for, I thought prayer in school was bad, but no, Jim, what we're learning here, prayer in school is only bad if Christians do it. So now you are getting unequal treatment. You are getting discriminating treatment based on your religion. This is religious discrimination. This is a violation of Civil Rights Acts, and I guess the 14th Amendment could get rolled up in there somehow, because that seems to be one of the go-tos for these people. But what you're pointing out isn't a joke.
Exactly. I mean, you can see what happened over in the Wiley School District, where somehow a group got in and was passing out religious information
we talked about
during a lunch hour.
We talked about the Wiley East story last week. Oh, great point, Jim. Great point. Thank you for calling. Jeff and Cumbie, you're next up on WBAP. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I actually was in college back in the 90s to be an educator until I got kicked out because I wouldn't toe the line on some things. And 20 years ago, my wife and I decided to homeschool our children. Since that time, I've talked to a bunch of educators. I've worked in education, both at Region 10 in Dallas and also at Dallas County Schools before they went away. And what I can tell you is, and don't think I'm crazy, but back in the 50s, they were right about the communists and the socialists invading Hollywood, not only Hollywood, but education. The communists and the socialists took over education back in the 50s at the college level and have indoctrinated your teachers. And the younger the teacher, the more likely they're going to be a flaming liberal. And I'm not saying that as a Republican or a Democrat, because I'm neither. I support the Libertarian Party and have not voted for a Democrat or a Republican in over 20 years.
Yeah, you're describing me. I've just had it with both parties. I think the Democrats are just off the wall, hair on fire, socialist monsters, and the Republicans are their enablers. As far as I'm concerned, neither one of these parties is any bit serious about balancing the budget or getting rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. None of them are serious about getting rid of the Department of Education. I want giant swaths of that federal government gone. I want the thing to be returned to what the Constitution said in Article 1, Section 8. And anything short of that is just going to continue to fail, Jeff. But thank you very much. I appreciate you calling in. 800-288-9227 if you have some strong opinions on this. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by Logan Washburn from Dallas Express, who's been covering some of this, who's been covering some of the walkouts, the ICE protests, the Islamification of North Texas in Plano and Frisco. He was at the meeting in Plano last week where this came up. So you're going to love what he has to say next. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker, and we're talking about the continuing protests against ICE in Texas public schools. Now, this seems to be really simple for most of us. No, we don't think children should be chained to their desk when they're in school, and if they feel strongly enough about a cause, they should be able to get up and walk out. However, they should be treated just the same as any other student if they decided that they were going to ditch class. You don't get out of class free card just because you've ascribed to the correct political ideology. But that's what we're seeing now. We're not seeing equality. We're seeing your taxpayers used for government institutions to exploit their proximity to your children for political purposes, and it's pretty sick. My next guest, Logan Washburn from Dallas Express, probably has some hot opinions on this, and I've seen you cover a lot of these stories, and this is kind of tied because they're protesting the enforcement of our immigration laws. This is all one big messy soup of the Indianization of Frisco and Plano and Wiley and what was going on there last week with the ICE deportations. And your thoughts, are schools being honest with us when it comes to allowing or not allowing kids to protest? Oh, definitely they're using them for political ends. Now, Governor Abbott says that the school districts are going to have to enforce the rules as they're written, and you don't get exceptions for political protest. But is there going to be any follow through on that? Oh, absolutely. So let's tie this into the other hot button issue. I've seen some great reporting from you in the Dallas Express on the Islamification and the Indianification of Frisco and Plano. And, there was some meetings last week where things got heated. And I saw some of your reporting on that in a candidate forum as well. And I feel like these are all tied together. Yeah. Hang on. Did I get this audio from you? This is from Viziri, right? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, let me play this real quick.
Wherever it is. I called out Valentina Gomez for calling all Muslims, dirty names and being a complete bigot and trying to get social media followers. I speak the truth. But I also want to say, as someone whose entire family is Muslim, I'm not down with Sharia law. Sharia law says that women on that side of the room are worth half as much as men. Do you all agree with that? That is true. That is 100% true. In Iran, Sharia law says women are worth half as much as men. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. And I'll talk about ICE.
All right. Thank you very much for that audio, Logan Washburn from the Dallas Express. Where do we go from here? I hear the governor saying he's going to push back against schools that allow protests. I hear the governor saying and Ken Paxton saying that they're going to do everything they can to stop these Sharia cities. But I feel like we're losing this battle, Logan. Okay, well, great reporting again. Logan Washburn from the Dallas Express. How do we find your work online? Yeah, follow him on Twitter/X. And if you go to DallasExpress.com, the story we just talked about is pinned as the top story. So you can read more about that there. I have some great callers lined up who are talking about issues with public schools allowing protests and teaching your kids that ICE is bad. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. A lot of parents upset that their kids are walking out of class. A lot of parents upset because it doesn't match their political ideology. A lot of parents, I'm of the belief, I don't care if it does match my political ideology. You're 14. You don't know anything about the world, much less have an opinion that the rest of the world should even have any weight in whatsoever. And that's no offense to you. You're 14. You're not supposed to know anything. And here's the way I explain it to my kids, because this is the way I explained it to myself when I was a kid. I remember, people try and politicize you when you're 16, 17, and you're in high school. Even when I was in college, my response was, I don't know enough about the world for adults to have any respect for my opinion, and I'm okay with that. And I realized that, like, when I was 16, it was just like 4 or 5 years ago. I was playing with He-Man action figures and Legos and Ninja Turtles and watching cartoons. And look how far I've come in 5 years. Well, this process isn't calcified when you're 16. And I used to think, well, how different am I going to be 5 years from now when I'm 21? And then how much smarter am I going to be 5 years after that when I'm 26? And so maybe by the time I get to around my parents' age and I've actually experienced life, I don't know, maybe gotten married and had a kid and gotten a mortgage and had a career, or maybe made one paycheck in my entire life, then maybe people should start putting a little more stock into what I think. But I used to even look to the left and my right and tell my peer group, no one should care what we think. No one should have any weight on what our opinion is on public affairs. We know nothing. And that's okay. Just like it's okay that a 4-year-old doesn't know how to drive a car. But we definitely don't know how to run a country. We still live with our parents. Thank you very much. But no, they must gas these kids up. You're on the right side of history. Things that you do can change the world. There's suffering people out there, and you can do something about it. Oh, stop it. Having a hissy fit in the street doesn't improve anybody's life. John in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. Hey, John.
Hey, I was in high school back in the early 80s, and we had a little bit of that, politics and environmental stuff. I mean, but that was still, back then, that was considered lame. That was kind of like old hippie stuff. I think one of them, we had probably 3 walkouts during that time, maybe an hour or so. I think one, if I try to think back, I think one was about the ozone. I think we were all going to die by 1988. That's still to be seen, of course. Everything's going to flood and poisoned by radiation. Nevertheless, I think I would be somewhat of a hypocrite if I didn't support protest in some way, because of like 2 major factors. For me as a teenager, and maybe some other people wasn't, thinking like I was thinking, if you had study hall or PE when they wanted to do a walkout, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But if you could have got me out of math, English, or science class for over an hour, oh my God, I would take that in a New York minute.
Yeah, well, I'm even more degenerate than you, John. If I'm going to skip class, I am not going to waste it at a protest. Me and the boys are going to the lake. My friend Jeff has a boat. There's going to be girls there. Bathing suits will be involved. Magic might happen. Who knows? But
yes, but think, the number one reason for me and a lot of my friends was an hour outside in front of the school. Now, it wasn't
absolutely. Absolutely.
By the cops or by the media or anything, but you had over an hour to scam on all the girls.
Right. All right. Me and John in Fort Worth probably got along just fine when we were in high school. Eric in McKinney, you're on WBAP. Go.
Hey, James, it was nice to meet you a couple months ago at the Medal of Honor Museum, but you got me to go to the internet and look up McKinney High School, since I'm in McKinney, and the worst performing McKinney High is 52% math, 54% reading, 97% graduation rate. The best school in McKinney North, 68% math, 67% reading, 96% graduation rate. And this is rated, one of the best schools in Texas. Where the best McKinney can do is 68% math and 67% reading with a 96% graduation rate. You're right. There's a total disconnect between graduation and performance.
Okay, listen, before we had public schools, just digest this. None of us know of the time before that. We can only read about it in retrospect because my parents had public schools, our grandparents had public schools. But before public schools were a thing about 100 years ago, when a kid graduated high school and he was going to go into college, like I remember it was like 2 months ago, I read the entrance requirements to get into Columbia, which is like an Ivy League school now, but it was just a regular school back in the day because there wasn't a whole lot of schools or a whole lot of people clamoring to go to school. You had to be able to read Virgil in Latin, like in the native language as Virgil wrote it.
Right.
And nowadays, the incoming freshman class of Columbia or just any of these colleges, how many of them even know who Virgil is, much less what language it could possibly even be in? How many of our graduating high school seniors can even read Latin? 4? So the standards have come down so low that, I noticed this, and not to make fun of my old hometown, but when I was going to Bug Tussle, we had some really stupid kids in there. And look, I'm not making fun of them. It's just when you have, my graduating class was like 180, 190 people. Whenever you have that, some of them are going to be dumb. Some of them are going to be below average. I mean, mathematically speaking, half of them are going to be below average. And when I saw some of these absolute booger-eating window lickers graduating, I lost all respect. I was like, well, I guess this piece of paper means absolutely nothing. They're just handing these people out to anyone who can sit through class without getting arrested, I suppose. 800-288-9227. Got a couple of good calls, and I'm going to tell you about the next Parker pour coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, hey there. Welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker. Lori over here on Facebook said teachers need to teach, not teach activism. Yeah. I mean, we say that. Wouldn't we be in favor of it, though? I say we. I'll just tell you, I would be in favor of it if they actually taught the ideology that I support. I'd be okay with it if they were like, hey, like, again, I don't believe in protesting. I don't believe going out in the streets holding a foam core sign is how you're supposed to predicate change in a functioning democratic republic, representative republic. That being said, I wouldn't be too upset if the teachers were teaching them how important the Constitution is or what the founding fathers really thought about the issues of the day. But they're not. Look, we're all ambivalent toward math, reading. These are things that are not political. These are things that are not even debatable. Everyone needs to know how to read, write, arithmetic. But in these other situations, they're like when you say schools aren't supposed to indoctrinate kids. No, they are actually supposed to indoctrinate kids. That's just a synonym for educating if you're not teaching them something wrong. So if they were teaching what I liked, reverence for the Second Amendment, if they were reverence for Western civilization and Christian values, and you don't have to be a Christian to appreciate Christian values. You don't have to be a Christian to understand that societies generally that follow the Ten Commandments, societies that discourage you from stealing or murdering or adultery, they have a better record of success throughout the record of history than the ones who depart from it. So even from a secular logical standpoint, I wouldn't mind if they were teaching activism if I agreed with it. I can say that. The only reason that these people who are going along with this allow it is because they agree with it. It's not the right thing to do. David in Arlington, you're on WBAP.
Hey, yeah. Actually, I'm in Fort Worth now. I was waiting, but I just wanted to give you another kind of viewpoint. So I'm 50. I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, and I've taught in mostly Deep East Texas, and I just moved up here, and I've taught in the DFW area, 2 different schools. I don't see what you're talking about. Like, what I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I have never seen that in 20 years. Now, I did see a superintendent in Deep East Texas who allowed a Christian group to come in and distribute Christian comic books telling the kids that because they were depressed, they were going to hell. Things like that.
Okay.
Now, I'm libertarian. I'm Christian. I've had them my entire life, come from a military family. But activism is only about going to be an activist, you have to have differing views. So there's no activism if all you do is say activism's only good if it's for this one ideology, because then there is no activism. It's just people agreeing with you. So I don't know. I just thought I could offer a different perspective. And our school walked out today. Did we stop them? No. Did we tell them they were going to be in trouble? Yes.
Are they going to be punished like if they just skipped school for any other day?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I'm all on board with that. But that's not
cameras.
That's not what was being reported by parents in Plano last week. An email went out to some of them, and they were being told that, hey, we let the kids walk out today, and as long as they followed the rules, there's no punishment or anything for it. We figured this was a good learning opportunity. And then they changed their tune by Wednesday of last week. And there's also a level of duplicity in there that bothers some people. But in your entire teaching career, have you ever seen a teacher have sex with a student?
Yes.
Oh, you've seen that?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. Yes,
but you haven't heard about any.
I replaced a teacher who was in trouble, who was texting a student and saying, "Come to my room so we can have sex." So I've seen that. I've seen that in the schools. I've seen coaches who take advantage of their closeness with.
But you've just heard the stories, but you haven't heard the stories about the teachers who are pushing gender ideology. You haven't heard that. You heard the ones about the sex, but you haven't heard that. I think there's a little selective admission there, but I do appreciate you calling, David in Arlington. Thank you very much, everyone, for hanging out today. The next Parker Pour is coming up at the Omni Fort Worth Hotel a week from tomorrow. You got it? Next Thursday, I'm going to be at the Omni Fort Worth Hotel, live James show from 2 to 5, happy hour from 5 to 7. Come on out. I would love to meet you. If you don't know where it's at, ask your phone. It's right across from Fort Worth Convention Center, but your phone can take you right there. So Parker's Pour next Thursday, not tomorrow, next Thursday, Omni Fort Worth Hotel. The bar at the bottom is called Whiskey and Rye. Come on out and see me. I'd love to meet you. I'm James Parker. Mark Levin's coming up next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP.